Morning sunlight spilled across the glass front of Caldwell Innovations like a polished promise, clean, bright, untouchable. Inside, the lobby moved with mechanical precision. Executives in tailored suits crossed the marble floor without breaking stride. Security guards nodded without smiling. Everyone knew where they was going, and more importantly, who mattered. At the far corner of the lobby, Daniel Reyes pushed his mop in long, careful strokes. The wheels of the yellow bucket squeaked faintly, a sound swallowed by the hum of conversation and the soft chime of elevators. Daniel kept his head down, like he always did. 37 floors above him, deals were being made that could move markets. Down here, he wiped away footprints no one remembered leaving. Outside the glass doors, the black sedan waited. Daniel noticed it the moment it pulled up. It wasn't the car itself. Luxury vehicles came and went all day. It was the way it stopped too close to the curb. Too deliberate. The engine didn't idle naturally. It purred, steady and controlled, like it was waiting for a signal. Daniel's chest tightened. He told himself he was imagining things. He had bills to worry about. A son who needed new shoes. A double shift tonight. Not ghosts from an old life he didn't talk about anymore. Then the driver stepped out briefly to open the rear door. Daniel watched from behind the mop handle. Wrong shoes. Too tactical. Too clean for a company chauffeur. The driver leaned back inside the car for half a second longer than necessary. When he straightened, sunlight caught something metallic beneath the steering column. Just a flash, gone almost instantly. Daniel's grip tightened. No, 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 no. Across the lobby, Mark Caldwell exited the elevator, phone pressed to his ear, irritation written into every sharp movement. He was mid-argument, barely acknowledging the people around him. Tell them I'm already late, Mark snapped. If they can't understand that. He ended the call and strode toward the exit. Daniel's pulse roared in his ears. He looked at the guards. Distracted. At the receptionist, laughing at something on her screen. At the employees drifting past the doors, blind to what waited just outside. Mark reached for the handle. Daniel didn't remember deciding to speak. His voice tore out of him, raw and loud. Sir, don't get in the car. The sound cracked the lobby in half. Conversations died mid-sentence. Shoes halted. Someone dropped a phone. Mark froze, one hand still inches from the glass door. Slowly, he turned. What did you just say? He asked, disbelief sharpening his tone. Daniel swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, to step back, to disappear like he always did. Instead, he took a shaky step forward. Please, Daniel said, don't get in. Just wait. A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. One executive frowned. Another smirked. This wasn't how things worked here. Janitors didn't interrupt CEOs. Mark's eyes narrowed. This is highly inappropriate, he said. Security. Two guards shifted closer. Daniel raised his hand slightly. I know how this sounds. But something's wrong with that car. Mark let out a short, humorless laugh. You expect me to believe that? Daniel's gaze flicked to the sedan again. The driver sat rigid behind the wheel, hands locked at 10 and 2. Not moving, not reacting. Sir, Daniel said, voice trembling now, I wouldn't do this if I wasn't sure. Mark stepped forward anyway. That's when Daniel's fear turned into desperation. Please, he shouted. I've got a kid. I wouldn't risk my job over nothing. That stopped Mark cold. Not the words themselves, but the way Daniel said them. Not dramatic, not attention-seeking. It was the sound of a man who had already lost too much. Mark studied him. For the first time, really looked. The worn uniform, the tired eyes, the quiet certainty buried under fear. Outside, a faint click echoed from the car. Almost nothing. Daniel's eyes went wide. Get back, he shouted. Mark turned just in time to see the driver's jaw tighten. And suddenly, everything changed. Daniel Reyes had learned long ago how to be invisible. It wasn't something anyone taught him. Life had done it naturally, piece by piece. After the funeral, after the hospital bills, after the nights when his son fell asleep asking questions Daniel didn't know how to answer. So he cleaned. He cleaned offices where people argued about numbers bigger than his yearly salary. He cleaned hallways where success echoed loudly but never stopped for him. And every morning, he told himself the same thing. Keep your head down. Get through the shift. Go home to your kid. But some instincts never die. As Mark Caldwell stood frozen by the glass doors, Daniel's mind wasn't in the lobby anymore. It snapped backward, years into the past, into a different uniform, a different life. Back when Daniel worked maintenance for a private security contractor, before the paychecks vanished and the promises did too. Before his wife, Elena, waved goodbye one rainy evening and never came home. That job taught him to notice what others missed. Patterns, replacements, things that didn't belong. Like the car outside, Daniel remembered the exact second his stomach dropped. It wasn't dramatic. No alarms, no flashing lights. Just a quiet certainty that crawled up his spine. The driver wasn't the usual one. Daniel had seen the regular chauffeur dozens of times. Older guy, slight limp, always nodded politely. This one stood straighter. Too straight, military straight, and those shoes, black, polished, reinforced soles. Not what company drivers wore. When the man leaned back into the car, Daniel caught it. A glimpse of metal, flat, circular, magnetic. Daniel's breath had caught painfully in his chest. He'd seen devices like that once before, taped beneath armored vehicles overseas. Not to cause chaos, to send a message, targeted, precise, final. Back in the present, Mark Caldwell stared at him like he was losing patience by the second. "You're causing a scene," Mark said sharply. Daniel nodded. "I know." Security guards were closer now. One reached for his radio. Daniel forced himself to keep his voice steady. "Sir, there's something under that car. I think it's a trigger device." The driver's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Daniel noticed. So did the other guard. "Step away from the vehicle," the guard ordered. The driver didn't move. That's when Daniel knew there was no more time. He rushed forward, ignoring the shouts behind him, and slammed the rear door shut with all his strength. The sound cracked through the air. "Everyone back," Daniel yelled. "Now." The driver's door flew open. He ran. Chaos exploded instantly. People screaming, alarms blaring, security tackling the man just feet from the curb. Mark stumbled backward, shock written across his face. Then it happened. A sharp beep. Fast, mechanical. Daniel grabbed Mark's arm without thinking. "Run," he said, voice low and urgent. They barely cleared the entrance when the blast hit. It wasn't fire at first, just pressure. Glass shattered outward. The ground jumped beneath their feet. Heat followed a second later, licking at the wreckage. Daniel shielded Mark with his body as they fell. For a moment, the world was noise and smoke. And then, silence. Daniel lay there, ears ringing, heart hammering, staring at the sky. He thought of his son, and how close he had come to breaking the promise he made, to always come home. Sound returned in fragments. First, the alarms, sharp, relentless, echoing through the shattered entrance. Then voices layered over one another, urgent and panicked. Somewhere close, glass crackled as it settled. Mark Caldwell lay on his side, staring at the sky through a haze of smoke. His ears rang so loudly he thought he might be going deaf. When he tried to move, pain flared through his shoulder. He was alive. The realization hit him harder than the blast. A paramedic knelt beside him moments later, hand steady, voice calm. "Sir, stay still. Can you hear me?" Mark nodded slowly. His eyes searched the chaos until they found Daniel. The janitor sat several feet away on the pavement, legs folded awkwardly beneath him, back pressed against a concrete barrier. His mop lay abandoned near the doorway, snapped clean in half. One of his hands shook uncontrollably, the other pressed against a shallow cut on his forehead. Blood trickled down into his eyebrow. No one was paying him much attention. Police had the driver pinned to the ground. Security teams moved in coordinated bursts. Cameras flashed. Phones were already out. Mark pushed himself upright despite the paramedics' protest. "The man who warned me," he said hoarsely. "Check him." A medic hurried over to Daniel. "I'm fine," Daniel insisted, though his voice betrayed him. "Just dizzy." The medic cleaned the cut and wrapped his head. "Shock," she said gently. "Sit tight." As the smoke thinned, the wreckage became visible. The sedan was destroyed. Doors twisted, windows gone, the front end peeled open like a broken shell. Seeing it made Mark's stomach turn. He imagined himself sitting inside, checking emails, unaware. Dead before the message even sent. A detective approached Mark, notebook in hand. "Mr. Caldwell, we're going to need a statement." Mark nodded absently. His gaze never left Daniel. "Talk to him first," Mark said. "He's the reason I'm breathing." Daniel flinched when the detective turned toward him. He hadn't planned for this part. He answered questions slowly, carefully, about the car, the shoes, the device. About how he knew. He left out Elena, left out the training, left out the part of his life he'd buried just to survive. "You're saying you acted on instinct?" the detective asked. Daniel nodded. "Yes, sir." The detective studied him for a moment longer, then closed the notebook. "Good instincts." Hours later, the lobby was sealed off. Employees were sent home. News vans lined the street. Daniel stood alone near the curb, watching people speculate about motives and money and power. Someone shoved a microphone toward him. "How does it feel to be a hero?" a reporter asked. Daniel stepped back. "I'm not a hero," he said quietly. "I'm just a dad." Mark heard that. Later, in a temporary command office, Mark finally approached him. "You could have walked away," Mark said. "Most people would have." Daniel met his eyes for the first time since the blast. "I've walked away before," he said softly. "It costs more than you think." Mark nodded. That night, as Daniel rode the bus home, his phone buzzed with a message from his son. "Did you get off work okay?" Daniel closed his eyes, swallowed hard, and typed back. "Yeah, buddy, I'm coming home." The city moved on faster than Daniel expected. Within days, the shattered glass at Caldwell Innovations was replaced. The scorched pavement outside the entrance was scrubbed clean. Employees returned to work, careful at first, then slowly slipping back into routine. But Daniel couldn't. Sleep came in pieces now, short, shallow stretches broken by the memory of alarms and fire. He woke before his alarm every morning, listening for his son's breathing from the next room. Some nights, he sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, hands wrapped around a cold mug of coffee, wondering how close he'd come to leaving his boy alone in the world. At work, people looked at him differently. Some smiled too much, some avoided him altogether. A few whispered his name like it carried weight now. Daniel hated all of it. He still wore the same uniform. Still pushed the same mop. He just did it with a knot in his chest. 3 days after the incident, his supervisor told him the CEO wanted to see him. Daniel almost didn't go. The executive floor felt like a foreign country, quiet, carpeted, insulated from the rest of the building. When Daniel stepped into Mark Caldwell's office, he stood awkwardly near the door, cap in his hands. "Mr. Reyes," Mark said, rising from behind his desk. "Thank you for coming." Mark looked different now, less rushed, less armored. They sat. "I've read the reports," Mark continued. "I know what you noticed. I know what you did. And I know what it cost you." Daniel frowned slightly. "I didn't lose anything, sir." Mark held his gaze. "You risked everything." Mark slid a folder across the desk. Daniel opened it slowly. The numbers didn't make sense at first. A new position, a real title, a salary that made his throat tighten. Health coverage, time off, and on the last page, an education fund, structured and guaranteed. "For your son," Mark said. "No conditions." Daniel's hands shook. "Sir, I don't have the qualifications for this." "You have exactly the qualifications I want," Mark replied. "You noticed what others missed. You acted when others wouldn't. And you did it without thinking about reward." Daniel stared down at the papers, overwhelmed. "Why?" Mark leaned back, exhaling. "Because I built a company obsessed with innovation, and forgot to value awareness. You reminded me." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Daniel nodded. "Okay," he said, "but I'm still walking the floors." Mark smiled. "Good. That's where you see the truth." That evening, Daniel came home early. His son looked up from the couch, confused. "Did you get fired?" Daniel laughed. A real laugh, surprising them both. "No," he said, "I got promoted." Later, after his son fell asleep, Daniel stood by the window, city lights blinking below. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a father who had been given another chance to keep a promise. And this time, he planned to keep it.